All right, Micah, we are going to be talking about a hot topic because it is the most common situation that new clients talk to us about. And it's the conundrum of internal email and Slack chats and team chats. And we're going to rip off the Band-Aid and we are going to break up with email and talk about, it's going to be a great breakup. You're going to be happy. Nobody's going to have any tears or Kleenex.
Yeah, definitely. So when we started engaging with clients, and we did this exact same process with ourselves years and years ago, Alane, do you remember where we had all of our internal communication was email and we couldn't keep track of anything, and we were dealing with threads and Gmail searches constantly. And then broke up with email and went to like 0% email.
Yeah, I don't even know the last time I sent you an email.
Yeah, I can't, we just don't do it. So let me kind of illustrate. This is typically what I see with 99% of agencies here. I'll zoom in here so we can see it. Agencies and B2B companies, they essentially have, whether it's internal communication and mostly around projects, it's all done in email and it's all done in Slack and Teams. And these two things basically, I'm going to make this pretty, sit out here in their own island. So they have all this work over here. And then essentially, well, let me build another island here. We've got some nice
at building islands.
Yeah, I'm really good at making islands. So I'm also really good at copying and pasting graphics to create islands. But this is kind of representing what it's like for 99% of the companies that we start working with. We've got our internal email and Slack and maybe Teams over here on this island. And then we've got tasks and projects. And essentially this amounts to like task list and project list. And that's it. That's all that's like sitting over here.
So let's talk about like some examples of what we're talking about for internal communication. Like, man, chat, either Slack or Teams or whatever chat platform you're using, gets out of hand really quickly. And people use that for client, like a status update or where are we at on this? Or, hey, this is what a client just told me. Can you make this happen? And so they start using those platforms and creating that as the go-to knowledge place. And well, that when you do that, the chat just keeps going. Like things get lost. People go to lunch, They come back, they may not check it and read it. And so things just keep on going. And so things can get missed, things can get dropped. And then the same thing with internal email is that you don't have any accountability and that things can be emailed and you never know if it comes out of email.
Yeah. And I would even say these are split as well. So we've got Slack and real-time communication happening over here, and then we've got email happening over here. These two channels could be talking about the same subject, but there is no connection between. And then we still have our lonely tasks and projects sitting over here. And inherently, this is the exact problem that creates so many more problems. There's a few that come to mind, and actually, I would even say this does not look like a brick wall, but imagine this being a brick wall or just vast ocean. Maybe I should color it blue. So this is our vast ocean here.
Between islands.
There we go. Look at all that ocean. Yep. And essentially, now all my lines are going to be vast oceans. All right. Essentially, we have things that happen like this, where we'll have, wow, it's getting a little crazy in here. So we got email happening on this one side and it's going into the ocean, and tasks and projects are sitting in the ocean. And there's no way to correlate or collaborate or work together on any of these things. And this brings all type of problems. So for example, accountability, you already mentioned. Like that's a huge red flag. We've got accountability, or really this is lack of accountability. Because if we're looking at our tasks and projects, who knows like how do we find things in inboxes for individual people, and how do we know where to search in Slack, especially if it's happening in one-to-one chats and private DMs. There's no way to correlate that, which means we don't know what's happening, which means project managers don't know what's happening, which means leadership has no idea what's happening. So if you're listening to this and you hear all this, keep watching, because we are going to show you the promised land and how to solve for all of this.
Yes, it's life-changing.
Alane, when we were chatting earlier, you brought up this one, and I think it's genius. Do you want to talk a little bit about where you were going with this? Because you had to deal with this a lot with our last business.
Well, because you have team turnover. Even if you're an amazing company that keeps employees, you're going to have some turnover. People want to go try new things. And so what happens, and the reason that I dealt with it more than Micah did, is because I managed our team of account managers, and we had 20. And you have somebody managing 50 clients on a team of 20, that is substantial data that they hold. And then, so think about that turnover. If everything is housed in their email and you either shut down their email and you don't have access to it anymore, or you're still keeping every employee's email live so that you have access to things, you're having to then go search and dig in a past employee's email just to find an answer that you need so that you look put together.
Yep.
And that is painful.
The same goes for Slack
hours.
too. The same goes for Slack. If as soon as somebody is let go or they quit, trying to get their Slack history and finding things that correlate with tasks and projects that they were working on or emails that they were sending to other people is just impossible.
Yeah, you as a manager or as a business owner, you have no visibility anymore into what's happening at the company and how things are being handled.
Another one that we can look at here is access to client history. So we've got client history in email, we've got client history in Slack. Maybe we have the history of the actions or the action items or the requests that were made that came in, but they're all separated. So as a project manager or as a leader or as a department head, it is impossible to actually visualize the history of any client, what's going on, what happened, where are we at? And, again, this is just one of those items that get brought up constantly.
Yeah, this one too is so important because you have the access to it, but it also goes back to accountability too in here. When it's not in email, if you're using it, and we're going to talk about where to put this stuff, but if it's not in email and you have it all in a place that everybody can communicate, then you also have a record of what's happening with that client and can then see where balls are being dropped. So with that, if it's just in email or if it's just in Slack, you don't have that same client history with the record of who's doing what and when.
Yeah, excellent point. Okay, the next thing that we see that is caused by just this alone is this sense of false urgency or being reactive to everything. I've lived in that world for too many years, and I vowed never to go back there. And it's very easy to get into. And so, Alane, you brought up this one as well that you saw a lot in the past. So I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, this to me is actually, if nothing else, right here, this one point is that it stops people. You don't know what other people are doing. They might be trying to concentrate and get things done, which we hope so as business owners, right? We hope they're getting deep work in and focusing. But if I get a Slack, especially from another executive, that feels urgent because somebody needs something. Or if we're managing clients and I've got a team of 20 and they Slack me or need something in email, then that also feels urgent because it's happening right then. And Micah, you and I were on a call with a new client this week, and this right here was a huge piece. He was like, I am burnt out from this because I am trying to focus on other things. But as soon as I get a group chat in Slack, I feel like I have to drop everything. And it is because it's real time. And so you feel like you need to tackle those things.
Definitely.
And that eats up people's day. if it's happening to you, it's happening to other team members too. And so everybody's time is getting eaten. And you see that efficiency just go down for everyone on your team.
Yeah. And these topics that we're talking about here, we're talking about real money. Lack of accountability is real money, going down the drain because you can't identify where the problems are. Turnover and the cost of bringing on new people, the cost of losing knowledge and institutional knowledge and communication threads here, real money. Access to client history, just a pure efficiency right there. Think of if it takes 1 minute or 30 seconds to get access to client history versus an hour of correlating what the heck is going on. Mm-hmm. That is huge money. A false urgency. What if we're working on the wrong things? What if we have a client who says, hey, I'm just asking about this, but I don't really need all of this done right now. But when it comes in, and because we are so reactive in this mind state over here, all we're doing is acting on it. Well, that could lead to some huge problems.
Talk about stressful. Like when we changed how we were doing things, it changed my life because I wasn't so stressed. And you're getting pinged all the time. You're on high alert. Your stress level is like constantly fighting things. And so you actually can have a more peaceful day. Like there's still work to do, but it's not, you're in a constant state of tackling these incoming things all the time where your body's reacting in a, state of stress constantly.
Yes. Yes. And that also, these kind of all build upon themselves. That's an excellent point, because when you have this false urgency, this reactiveness, that additional stress, and this last one that we're talking about here, the inability to get into like focused deep work, which you mentioned a second ago, that is all going to lead to turnover. And, it's just like, the stress of not being able to access client history, not be able to answer leadership questions, not being able to answer client questions. As a project manager, right, the stress just builds and builds and builds. And we see this in project management quite a bit, where the clients that we work with, especially with agencies, hire a project manager, and that project manager is just racing to get as much done as they can in a day, to move all the tasks, to get everything going, to like hold this essential house of cards up, while all of this is trying to knock it down.
Yeah. It's amazing. Like when you look at this and when we talk about turnover, as a business owner, you're most likely not going to just up and leave your company. You are in it for a while, most likely, right? So you don't have the option to give up and go somewhere else. So you can be miserable for a very long time, but employees don't have to. And when we see that these things are happening within a company, that turnover increases because people get burnt out. They cannot stay in that state for a long period of time. And 6 months could be very common if it's very hectic and you've got a lot of clients and you're doing Slack chats and emails and all this all the time. And all the way, 6 months to 18 months. Well, you want employees, all that training time that you put into them, you want them to stay a while and to have, be able to know your clients inside and out or know their position inside and out. And so decreasing these pieces means revenue for your company, means more profit for your company.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Should we jump into how we do
Micah,
this, how we solve these?
Yeah. So, okay, we've talked about this. Like people are like, okay, I got this, but what do I do? Because there's
problems. If you're watching and going, yeah, that's okay. That's us.
Yep, then, you nailed it.
Yeah.
So what do we do? How do we solve
this? The first thing is that says internal email behind it. My crossout is a little too wide, but the first thing that we're going to do is completely nix internal email. Stop emailing each other. And so then that creates a gap. What do we do if we don't email each other? Should we just Slack and use Teams? Absolutely not. What we want to start with is we're going to put collaboration at the middle here. And then around that, you're going to have to bear with me for a second as I design this. All right. So essentially, we want the tasks and projects to have collaboration directly inside of them. And there's a lot of tools that are out there. We talk about these a lot. So this is going to be your ClickUps. This is going to be your Asana, your Mondays. They're all designed around this concept. We've got this project management system that houses the tasks and the projects. And then within that, we collaborate. And this replaces the internal email. And what's really important about this is the collaboration that's happening is it's related to specific tasks. It's related to specific projects. And it's not shown here, but that means it's related to specific clients. And the way you structure your project management system is really, really key. So we'll be talking about that in another video. But for now, with the topic of collaboration, this is basically the diagram that you're looking to achieve. And then what you have over here is Slack and Teams is still great, but you can shift this to urgent only. And when you have something urgent only like this, let me make it nice and pretty. There we go. Now, one thing that we didn't talk about over here is this interruptive behavior too much. Email, not so bad, depending on your notification settings, but Slack and Teams is frickin' awful. I know you hate it, Alane. I know there's days that I use it way too much, but internally and privately, I really hate it too, because every time a message comes in, it interrupts what I'm doing and it feels urgent. And I don't have access to what we're talking about. And there's no accountability of what it is. Like, it's just all this barrage of information.
Yeah. Yeah. This one is one of my biggest things at our company is, do not overuse Slack, because I am trying to focus on my work. And then if somebody needs something, then I want to jump in and help, but it needs to be something that you need and it's important. Like, is this important? Is it urgent? Then yes, I am happy to do a Slack about it. And I think there's, different nuances to things. Like sometimes we might do a brainstorming session where we don't need to necessarily be on a call, but we could do that in Slack. It's not urgent, but we all agreed that's okay. And I think there's like places for that. It doesn't always have to be in the project management system, but most of the time it can be in the project management system.
Yes. And so when we talk about collaboration inside of a project management system, we're really talking about asynchronous communication and collaboration. So that means it can work over time zones. It can work when people are focused or catching up on what it is. And all three of those tools have inboxes that make it really easy to manage and catch up on things or while you're during your private or your focused work time. And so the reason that I have a dotted line here is, let's say, Alane, you and I are collaborating on something in Slack, but it's urgent and we need to get it resolved. Well, once we resolve it, we want to document that inside the right task or the right project or the right client level inside of our project management system, so that tomorrow or next week, it's Friday right now when we're recording this, we're going to have 2 days of weekend. And when we come back on Monday, I don't know about you, Alane, but I sometimes struggle to remember what we talked about on Friday.
Oh yeah, you got to get back into the work mindset. And I mean, think about your employees that aren't thinking about work all the time. Like they do need a refresher. And so having it all there in the project management system with the tasks that they have due that day or that week, and they can prioritize however they need to, it makes a huge difference. Because how many times do you sit at your desk and you're like, okay, what do I work on? What do I do today? And on a Monday, it can take you a while if you don't already have things set up.
And if you're dealing with 2 separate oceans, or even 2.5 or 3 separate oceans, it's impossible.
It is. It makes it really difficult. And Micah, one of the things that I really like that you just said too, about if you are using Slack or, Teams for some type of brainstorm, like it always ends with action items that then get put into the related task or project in the project management system. And that is such a key piece, because your hub for your company is that project management system. And things are like, this is just one piece we're touching on with collaboration and how to keep everything together. But everything goes back to that as your hub, as your central source of knowledge.
Yeah, this then generates accountability because now we can go into the project management system, we can go to the client, we can go to the project. If we need to, we can go to the task and we know what's happening. And if we need to ask a question, we're collaborative right in there. It's not racing to Slack. Hey, where are we at with this? Or sending an email. Hey, what about this update? We know 50% of the time easily all of our questions are going to be answered because of this system. When we need to ask questions, we're asking questions in the right area. And then that's going to help us enhance and create that accountability that's all aligned without any extra effort. We're talking about, it may sound like it's work to set this up, and there is that initial structure, but once it's set up, we're talking about a fraction of time that it takes to generate accountability in this case.
Yeah. So Micah, I was thinking, let's give an example of like what this could look like. So let's just say client Zebra, and we're an agency that creates ads. And so our client Zebra asked us to create a new ad campaign for their stripes. And so we put it in the project management system. We get all the information about campaign stripes and we get it to the team. And then we have a due date on there. We know now the team has the information and a due date on there. I'm not going to get into any more nitty gritty on this. So we're just going to keep it high level.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So campaign stripes, it's got a due date and it goes to my ads team to go and do. As an account manager, I now know that my production team is accountable because I have clarified the information that they need. And if I didn't, they can ask a question on that. And that now I can see where the ball might get dropped. Or if it doesn't, I have the information then to go to my client and say, hey, campaign stripes is ready, Zebra.
Yep.
So it makes everybody accountable. You can actually see it.
And the amount of time that takes to create that, we're talking seconds, minutes at most. There's
especially if you're working with templates.
There's no digging in threads, none of that.
Yeah.
All right. So turnover also is improved here. And, we can kind of wait a little bit to talk about this one. But all these other benefits, just having this structured correctly without all the separate islands and without all the interruptive behavior is going to, just like all of these, increase turnover. All of the items that we're talking about here, solving it this way, for example, access to the client history.
Yeah, these two definitely work together now, because if you have turnover and you remove somebody from ClickUp or Asana or Monday, you still have all of the client history right there. Where did they leave off? What happened? What was the last thing that said? So you don't have to dig through email. It's all right there.
Yeah, definitely. And with the access to the client history, again, answers are readily available instead of requiring digging. So the amount of efficiency that's generated from this is, 10x.
Yeah. So this is a question I get a lot. And I thought we could cover it right here is how do people leave their inbox open, like as a tab on their computer? Because they, I think the assumption is like, I check my email all day because that's how we communicate. And I check my Slack all day because that's how we communicate. But the answer to, do you leave your inbox open on your project management system, is basically yes.
Yes.
That is because that is your internal team communication. And so, yes, you leave that open, and that is where you operate from, is your inbox. And so, it isn't, you're going to be surprised, because people feel like, oh, well, then I've got to check my Slack. I've got to check my ClickUp. I've got to check my email all day, and I'm just circling. No, it's not like that. Your email communication goes down substantially because you have everything in a place. People don't have to ask as many questions. So you actually are alleviated by using this, rather than feeling like you have to, I got to go to another system.
Totally. It may feel like we get that objection quite a bit is, well, isn't this just another system? And the reality is, yes, it is. But by adding this system, you're eliminating all of this, really, all of these islands that you have created. And so you centralize all of this. It's a great point, Alane. Having that project management system inbox open, like I describe it as kind of living in the project management system. And this can start to act as the central hub of your operations for the agency, because it can be so much more than just project management, because now you have team collaboration, you have internal projects, and how are you going to scale your agency? How are you running your own campaigns in addition to your clients? How do you do dashboards and run the business off of data, which, that opens up all kinds of opportunity, again, for efficiency and everything else. But staying focused on just collaboration and getting rid of email and focusing in here, the other thing that it does is eliminates this false urgency. When projects are set up correctly and the collaboration is happening inside of the tasks and the projects, then we have priorities for projects, we have priorities for tasks, we have priorities for clients. And again, all of that information is readily available instead of requiring a Slack question or a team question or an email or a meeting, heaven forbid. And so this false urgency drops to pretty much zero, because when something comes in, a request comes in, then you can go to the client, you can go to the project, you can go to the task and say, hold on, this is not a majorly urgent thing. I don't have to be reactive to this. I can put this in the backlog, and when it's time to work on it, that's going to come up and go from there. And if questions need to happen around this, it's in your project management system, and it's in collaboration here within context, and it's all asynchronous. And that last point is exactly what we're dealing with here, where that ability to communicate asynchronously means the interruptive behavior and those habits and that additional stress and all this cognitive burnout goes away as well. And instead of, interruptive behavior and no deep work, now we actually have deep work that can happen, this focused ability to work on the projects, to get creative. And all of that can happen with focus. And the rest of the operation can be collaborating in here, but it's not interrupting the people that are focusing. When they're done focusing, then they check their inbox and they catch up on all the stuff that they missed, replying back, hey, Lane, here's the answer to this, or I think this would be one way to do it. Here's option B, etc. Knock all those out, and everybody's up to speed without all the stress.
Yeah. I mean, and what I'm thinking through, talking through all these things is that we're talking about internal communication only in the perspective of client management. But what about training your team and upskilling them, if you have a sales team and you've got a new promo, updating them, that doesn't go through email either. So, we can continue building on this concept because all of these things apply with or without clients.
Yes. So where do people go from here? The people that are watching this, we've told them, hey, we've got these islands. This is creating a bunch of problems.
Yeah.
Here's what you need to do. What are the next steps?
All right. So the first thing is figuring, if you don't know which project management system that you need, is to figure out which one that you want to use. And with all the work that we've done, we have ClickUp, Asana, Monday are the most commonly used and what we think are the top ones for agencies and B2B companies. And to make it easy, we have a picker tool that you just answer. I think it's 11 questions, Micah. Can't remember. Yep. 11 questions. They're super simple. You do it less than 2 minutes. And based on what's important to you, how you run your company, it'll select and make a recommendation on which tool will work the best.
Yeah, and we'll link this in the description and make it really easy to access.
And another big thing is training your team on using it, because if you don't have a trained team on how to use their inbox, how to manage notifications, how to create tasks and assign things, then you're going to start seeing things fail because some people might use it really well and other people don't. And there is no consistency between your team. So training is a big piece of this.
So essentially, which project management system Makes sense. Asana, ClickUp, and Monday, they all have their pros and cons. All three are good solutions. They're good in different ways and they're bad in different ways. And that's why we put together this comparison tool, because you can put in your 11 major requirements that we just walk you through step by step, answer those questions, and then it will calculate which one is going to work the best for you. And so we can take that. And like I said, we'll have a link in the description. And then you mentioned training as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's super important.
And we also have, and we'll link to this in the description, we have free crash courses for all three of those project management systems. So you can share those with your team. You can have it as a part of new employee onboarding. That way, everybody on day one in less than 40 minutes can take and run with it and know how to use the basics of the project management system.
And we are putting together a live program. And that's one of the things that we'll take through a 90-day program from start to finish. Essentially, we're going to touch on everything in here, but also get into the nitty-gritty. So that's going to be every step of how do you build the systems? How do you manage capacity? How do you automate your agency from start to finish so that you can streamline all this and tackle all this without any headaches?
Mm-hmm. And go and enjoy your day at the beach at the end of the day instead of stressing about work.
Yeah, we're hanging out with your family.
Yeah, whatever is what you do for fun.
Well, thanks everybody for joining and watching the video. Follow the links in the description below. If you like what we're putting here, like and follow us on YouTube. We're releasing a whole series of videos very similar to this to help agencies streamline their entire process and automate their entire agency.